7 o'clock, we will start the meeting for the City of Hudson's Plan Commission meeting for September 24th, 2015. I am Randy Morissette, District 1 Alderman, sitting in for Mayor Burchell, who is out of town. So we will call it to order and start with item number 2, discussion, possible action on September 10th, 2015, meeting minutes.
Move to approve.
And I will second.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Number 3, discussion, possible action on the certified survey map, 3 commercial lots, 1 outlot, and dedication of public right-of-way north of Stage Line Road and east of State Highway 35, SSHD Incorporated.
This is the generally known as the area where the movie theater is at on Stage Line Road, just north on the extension of Old Highway 35. What's being proposed, this area was annexed to the city last year. What's being proposed is dedication of the what's been a private street to this point, and we need to establish a name for that. Then lots 5, 6, and 7. Currently, lots 5 and 6 were intended, at least in an original concept, to be 1 lot. Now it's proposed for 2 lots instead of 1. Lot 7 has sewer and water services to it. Lot 6 and Lot 7 have access to sewer and water off the common lot line between Lot 6 and 7. Lot 5, we checked record plans, currently does not have sewer and water service. What we at least suggest, if you want to create 2 lots there, is to extend services west and northwest back to Lot 5 in an easement, either along the right-of-way line or within the lot, within Lot 6. So I recommend approval of the proposed certified survey map with one condition at the road name. They've used the name of Stage Line Center Drive. We'll check that with the emergency medical service and with the post office. Sometimes they have concerns on duplication of names, so we'll check that. They're open to possibly changing the name of the street if necessary. And then secondly, the condition that if they want to create Lot 5, that sewer and water services would be provided to that lot, and generally to record the certified survey map prior to those improvements being made. Then they have to provide a letter of credit to us to 125% of that estimated cost of the sewer and water service.
Danny, they are then liable for putting the utilities in?
That's the only way we'll allow them to record the.
I will move to approve with the stipulation that Denny has presented, that the name be verified. Number 2, Lot 5 be noted that it needs sewer and water extended to that lot.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Frank seconds. Any further discussion?
Mr. Dan Bowers here tonight. Dan, you have any comments or questions?
No, that's my understanding.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 4, discussion and possible action on the certified survey map, 1 commercial lot, 2200 Badger Drive, east of Badger Drive and north of Crestview Drive, Hudson Center Holdings, Panda Express.
This is the lot at the northeast quadrant of Badger Drive and Crestview Drive. This Hudson Center is the former visitor center. That has been subdivided by a condominium plat in the past. What's being proposed is to create an individual lot by certified survey map for what will be the Panda Express parcel once that construction's completed. I have no opposition to it. There would be a requirement that their condominium plat would have to be amended, so that's an issue between the owner of the lot and the rest of the ownership. But other than that, I have no concerns or issues. Is anybody here representing Panda Express or that wants to visit or discuss anything?
Seeing none. Any questions or comments from the committee?
Move to approve?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Number 6, number 5, discussion possible action on concept development plans, Hudson Boat Works, 7,440 square feet, commercial and 2 future buildings east of 2nd Street and south of Cooley Road, HAF Red LLC.
This is the area between Dairy Queen and the Northwest Mutual building on the east side of State Trunk Highway 35. There were 3 residences there that the property was purchased and those buildings were raised. The water utility relocated the water line last year in looking at the possibility of buildings going in at that location. The existing sanitary sewer would need to be abandoned and sewer relocated, and I think Roger Humphrey is representing the developer tonight to talk about engineering issues. Other issues that the fire department's expressed some concern. I was hoping to meet with the fire chief on this issue, but we weren't able to get together this week about access into the backside of these buildings. And that might be a matter just amending the radiuses on the corners to allow a little more flexibility on fire apparatus. Hopefully, if the water line is now in front of the buildings, we can get a hydrant there so fire suppression from Highway 35 can be conducted. Another issue is the proposed pathway or sidewalk area. They had it removed off away from the buildings. When we vacated 2nd Street, the intention was to have the sidewalk or pathway up on the property line adjacent to the buildings. It'll complement the feeling of the downtown where the pedestrians are walking right in front of the building versus 10 feet away from the building. So that's something we want to work with them on. The general concept is acceptable. I have no concern just working out some of the details on engineering and access, and then the pathway. I expressed some concern or issue to the architect in regards to the front side of the building, that there's really no access off the front side. The access is coming off, and for some reason I'm not getting that pedestrian feel of those buildings. If we get pedestrians walking in front of the buildings, where most of the buildings in downtown Hudson are oriented towards retail, window views and so forth, and maybe that's something we can work with the architect on before the final development plans are brought back. I'll turn the floor over to Roger Humphrey and Matt Hafer from the architectural firm to discuss and present their plans.
Roger, and then make sure you state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name's Roger Humphrey, Humphrey Engineering. We have the development in front of you is really three buildings, phase development. Unit 1 is really what's being proposed first, but all 3 buildings are initially put together in this development plan so we can kind of see how they would all interact with each other. The first phase probably has somewhere between, I think it's 34 to 33 or 37 parking stalls together, where I think we have 62 altogether with, we actually have one spot where we provided 3 motorcycle stalls in addition to that. It just seemed parking is always kind of a premium, and so we kind of thought that would be a nice little addition. I agreed with much of what Denny said on the water utilities. So we have some updates to do with the as-builts that are out there with the utilities, but for the most part, I think they work better for the development once we have those in place. Happy to answer any questions. Matt's here with Hafe Architects as well to kind of go over that part of the plan.
And just one real minor detail is on your north of third building, if you subdivide this with condominium plat and you have individual lots, you may want to take a look at providing a disability stall on the north end of that, so you have disability access to that building in regards to building code requirements, so that might be something you want to take a look at. So.
Sure, absolutely.
May I ask a question? You know, I thought part of this abandonment process was the state was going to maybe ask for some of that land for more of a stacking lane for turning there and all. Has that all been
That was
addressed?
accommodated, and that's the reason the sidewalk and the pathway needs to be moved up in front of the building and not separated, because if they're separating it from the buildings the way it's proposed, eventually that turn lane, if extended to the south, would then take some of that area where that pathway's at, and why do we want to build it and then possibly remove it if the state comes back in? We want it built so it's up in front of the buildings, so that sidewalk doesn't have to be relocated at a future time if that lane gets extended in the future, so.
Another question, that's a low spot. I mean, back in 1965, I think that hole filled up with water when we had that big flood. Has that been looked at, the elevations and the floodplain and all of that stuff to that, or would you just raise the elevation of things?
Yeah, there's really two floodplains there. There's the St. Croix floodplain, which we're certainly out of, but yeah, all the water does kind of come down into that entrance area. And the Unit 1 building, I think, sits at least 2 feet higher than the curb line that we have up on the parking lot. So we have everything kind of elevated in that fashion. But we are aware that the water does come down through that area.
How tall would these buildings be, may I ask?
Right around 30 feet.
Two-story then?
Yeah, and they're kind of elevated above the street level, so they end up being about 30 feet. Just so that we can get, or tall, just so we can get sort of garden level windows in the basement, so that it's not totally unusable in the basement, so it's an opportunity down there then.
Yeah, building number 1, they'll have a basement. For the other 2 buildings, will be slab on grade, correct?
Potentially, yeah.
Good.
Any other questions from members?
What do we do, Denny? I mean, what's?
Well, I think if you feel comfortable, we can move it on from concept. They'd submit their final development plans. Staff has made recommendations on the engineering issues. We've talked about the fire access issue and the pathway issue. We'd want those reflected. I told Roger we will not bring this project back until staff is fully in agreement with the final development plans. We're not going to bring it back and then have a number of issues that need to be addressed before
So
it
do we
goes to common
postpone?
council. No, I think we can, I think the concept is fine. It's working out the details on advancing the details that advance it to the final development plan, so.
I will move to proceed. I don't know what the right choice of words here is with this.
If I can suggest something, it'd be approve the concept development plans with the final development plans to incorporate city staff recommendations.
I couldn't have said it any better. So please use that language.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
Frank seconded. Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion to recommend approval.
Thank you.
Concept. You're welcome. Thanks, Roger. Now, number 6, discussion, possible action on an application for a conditional use permit for a planned residential development, 145 one-family residence, Carmichael Ridge, north of Cooley Road and west of Carmichael Road, with Hans Hagen Home Incorporated.
City staff met with Mr. John Rass from Hagen Homes and their consulting engineers Tuesday. There are 4 or 5 issues that we've basically have given direction to their staff to address. John is here tonight to discuss any issues. It looks like there's some residents of the neighborhood here tonight. They may have comments. Basically, what I'd like to do is plans should be revised to address the changes that city staff suggested. Incorporate those, bring it back on October 5th for a final review, and the staff will have a recommendation for planning commission at that time. But, certainly if there's any issues that you want to have addressed, we want to make sure those get incorporated before the final. Not that those can't be changed or amended at our next discussion, but we want to try to get it as close to the final. What will happen basically is that a preliminary approval is given on the general master plan. That recommendation goes to the common council. The common council can either choose to approve it or deny it. If approved, then they have 120 days to bring back a final master plan and their preliminary plat for approval. And now come back to the plan commission and then to the common council.
John, I think you might want to come up to.
John, you want to? Essentially, some of the issues that were discussed Tuesday with city staff is storm drainage. One of the things that's being looked at and proposed by Hudson Homes is to take the storm drainage out of away from the Cuds Golfview area and pipe it, or put it in a pipe versus into the stormwater pond, and pipe it north, and then it'd go farther north into the system. But basically, we think we can avoid having drainage issues. That may also allow some extra room for berming along the west property line. Water mains looped between the streets. That's something that the water department is going to require. That was discussed, and again, the plans will be amended to provide easements and water mains loop between the cul-de-sac areas so we have adequate pressure in those residential streets. Again, a pathway versus sidewalk along the main street. That needs to extend all the way to Cooley Road, probably at least want it on one side, extend all the way from Cooley Road up to Carmichael, so we have a pathway system that goes all the way. Issues that still aren't fully resolved is left turn lane at, or not left turn, but the left turn at Cooley Road. Our city staff has some concerns on amount of traffic and the difficulty of possibly making that left turn going south and then turning eastbound on Cooley Road. And the last issue is access at Carmichael Road. Randy visited Culver's this week, and Culver's is continuing to express concern about not so much the interim design of an access when this development first goes in, but when that intersection at north of Cooley Road on Carmichael goes into a signalized intersection that will affect Culver's, and that's an issue we want to take a look at. But John, you have any general comments or any discussions you may have had with the neighborhood this week? And I don't know how many people, we did send out a memo about the lots, or the building corners being staked. So I don't know if you had an opportunity to take a look at that. I did go out, take a look at it myself. But you have any comments, John, or I'll turn the floor over to you?
No, I don't think so. I think, Denny, you summarized them well. We've had a chance to review some of those engineering issues and have no objection to the request of the city engineer on the items that Danny reviewed. They're all things that are feasible from a design standpoint. I had an opportunity to meet with Culver's a few weeks back, and the access that they have today is what we're proposing to leave. I think that the question they have, and probably the longer term issue, is what happens with that when Carmichael is improved per WisDOT's plans. So this isn't something that I feel like we're driving as much as it is what's the ultimate build out of Carmichael, and how do the businesses along Carmichael receive access, and we're willing to accommodate that in whatever fashion the city feels best serves everybody. When Hanson Brothers came in for approval, on their commercial lots, which include the clubhouse. There was an access plan that was presented at that time, and essentially what we've done is just match that to what was approved under that plan. So again, I think from our standpoint, we feel we can work with all the parties involved to make sure that those things are addressed and incorporated into our neighborhood plan. As you're aware, there are no definitive plans at this time for any commercial. I think if you recall from the traffic study, most of that traffic off of the site is associated with the commercial development, not the 145 lots. So when there's that discussion about a left turn onto Cooley as well as the Carmichael intersection, it really is driven by what happens with future commercial uses, which this planning commission has not reviewed nor recommended anything. I think when the rezoning came through, there were some concerns that there not be any bigger boxes or higher intensity uses perhaps. So I think until a use is identified for some of that property, it's kind of hard to predict what those turning movements may look like long-term. And of course, as those plans come forward, the city's going to have an opportunity to review those to make sure that it functions appropriately. But we feel for the 145 units that we have identified, that we can provide the access necessary to serve those in a way that doesn't cause negative impacts to the local road network. So again, we've have no objection to the request of city engineer and Mr. Darnold on the changes, and we'll be making those before you see this again and incorporating those into our plan. So I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, it's a matter of clarification. The intersection design at that is not WisDOT, it's the city of Hudson. The interchange is the issue for the DOT and the city of Hudson, but that intersection itself will be a city decision. I know Randy maybe you want to express what
Yeah.
you talked with Culvers this week about.
John, I talked this afternoon actually with the ownership of Culvers, and their biggest concern right now, and I would concur with them, is the median in the middle of there, which is going to prohibit the left-hand turn, immediate access. You're funneling them around and around. They're not really, they don't want that. It's the median is the question, whether you can move it back so they can continue their still left-hand entrance. That's something that they would like to be.
We can take a look at that issue.
I mean, because I'm assuming you're going to put a gate like your other properties with.
Yeah, have some type of entry feature there, so we'd like that moved back.
And that's what he
separated.
suggested,
Yeah.
moving it back, but not having that median in there so they could have an easier left-hand accessible.
Yeah.
If they have a gate feature, it'll be moved back to their property. It won't be all the way back out to Carmichael. We won't allow that, so.
So that's a
Yep.
consideration. And I also had another question from the previous meeting, which I was not at. The concern was brought about berms and the height of the berms that were brought. Have you answered a question that berms on the Laurel over on the Gulf View Division?
This was a plan that I think you have a reduction in front of you on, in which we identified the opportunity to, some small berms in a few locations. And basically these areas here where we've got a little bit more room. And then the ability to plant trees along that whole property line. So what we did was reorientate some homes, pull them back from the lot line, so that really, in this whole area now here, you have anywhere between probably 70 and 80 feet between the property line and the future homes, and that allows us to incorporate some smaller berms and get landscaping. You see in the images there, we're showing 8-foot trees. There's a fair number of trees along that common lot line that we feel if we can fill in the gaps, that we can provide a decent screen from the adjacent neighborhood.
Did you get some feedback? I'm sorry, Fred. Did you get some feedback from the homeowners
Yeah.
up there?
Yeah, they commented at the previous meeting on it, and I don't know if I
After
wanted.
that?
We went out and staked it. I haven't talked to anybody since that time, since the previous meeting, so no additional feedback.
Then my only question, just to tag along with what you're saying, is with Denny's comments tonight of changing the drainage by piping, what does that mean then to you presented the berming from last week, now you're gonna change this water stuff by piping some of it, so what does that mean?
Okay, yeah, that is more of a drainage issue. Currently, this pond that sits south of these condominiums is a landlocked basin. It's a pond that exists there today. It's been I guess, some flooding in the past or high water in the past. So when we came back, when we were here last time, we didn't have a solution for that. We were basically designing the pond to accommodate a back-to-back 100-year event, which would have satisfied the city's stormwater requirements. Upon looking at it and talking to the city engineer, we actually came up with a design that pipes this water over to here, which will then come out and run down the hill. So for the first time ever, that pond will have a positive outlet where it can drain out basically to the east and then go north. And then what we'll do is build a small berm, probably anywhere between 2 and maybe at the highest 4 feet, which will contain the water from going back to the west onto the Gulfview Estate properties, which then allows it to have an emergency overflow out this way and discharge the site without jeopardizing any homes from flooding. So it's really mainly that change was driven by the stormwater considerations, but it also would to some degree have some benefit in terms of allowing a small berm to be introduced there.
Thank you.
Any questions from committee members?
As far as sidewalks, you want sidewalks throughout the neighbor, I mean, last meeting, we had the 3 streets, and we talked, there was some discussion where it originally included sidewalks in there, and now they're not. Do we want sidewalks in that area? Which direction?
The cul-de-sacs you're talking
Yeah,
about?
correct.
I think if there's space to accommodate that, I would certainly support that.
I would
Me neither.
support it for a second reason, because there's the concern that people will be cutting across people's properties to get to football games and things like that, and we want to lay out the pathway that if you want to walk, here's how you do it. I would like to do it for that reason, along with what you said, Mary, to define if this is a walkable subdivision, define what it is, and not cutting across people's yards.
Optional or
There's some
something that you
concern
can look
about
at.
that.
Yeah, we, as I indicated before, we've gone back and forth in our neighborhoods.
Right.
We've seen preference to not have them, so whatever the city desires on that, we're amenable
I'd
to.
give a contrary opinion. I happen to live on a cul-de-sac, and, because of the radiuses of a cul-de-sac and driveways that are pretty close to each other, and the fact that, these houses look pretty close to the road already, I have a feeling it's gonna feel like a lot of blacktop and concrete in that area. It's gonna be pretty intense. And they are, we talk about people cutting across lawns. Well, it's hard to accommodate for that. And is it a regular thing, or is it a couple of kids going to a park or whatever it is? I'm not sure that a plan can accommodate people cutting through yards. So the question is, on cul-de-sacs, or these particular cul-de-sacs, does it make sense to have a sidewalk or not? I would be of the opinion that it'll feel like a concrete jungle if we introduce more of that in an intense area like that.
I don't disagree with you. I guess my comment was directed towards the main pathways, and I didn't say that, so.
And the more asphalt and cement we put down, the more rainwater we got, or, rainwater, stormwater we got accommodated for, and obviously it's an issue up there.
I agree with you, Kevin.
Frank, did you,
No, I'm inclined to also agree with that. Now, it's part of the concerns before had to do with people walking off out of this subdivision and crossing the homes up above.
In the Gulfview edition.
Correct, in the Gulf View. Wasn't there some conversation last time that,
Well, there was, and basically, I mean, if that's gonna be accommodated for, we have to have cooperation from the Gulfview
Right.
subdivision or residents. So, I mean, if they're willing to work with us, we can try to accommodate that, but otherwise, we're forcing something where we don't have easements or agreement to be there. So it's, you know, we just aren't gonna go in and put the gun in their head and say they have to do it. I think it's gonna require cooperation by that neighborhood if they wanna work with the city to see if we can address that issue.
Did you folks want to hear from any audience members, residents? Anybody out there want to speak to the issue? Mr. Olson? No, not tonight? No? This particular issue, yes. But
John Olson, 1717 Laurel Avenue. Still questioning the berms, and I'm not sure, John, if you were saying 2-foot berm down by the drainage pond? Is that what that?
That was specific to the
Okay. Yeah, that's, I still have questions where things are along the back of the property. I was just an hour ago standing there looking out with someone, and they're like, well, what are those stakes out there? I'm like, that's where the side of a house is gonna be. And they're like, you're kidding. And so that's my perspective coming from somebody that's at my house. And so that's why I'm concerned, so.
John, would a higher berm or trees cover that, or is it just too close?
Fill it in so that I'm not looking at houses. I don't know how it's gonna work out.
Now, the current plan proposes 119 trees, so it's not like it's, you know, they're sparingly planted. There's, I mean, it's,
Slug of trees.
Did you get a chance to look at the stakes out there?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a pretty good distance from the property line, it appears
It's
to be.
comparable to what our houses are.
Okay.
And also keep in mind, the whole development is much more densely populated than Gulfview. And so that's, I was just in a house in Stone Pine the other day, and I saw somebody putting an addition onto the back of their house. It's bigger than their house, and looks like it's virtually taking up the whole backyard. I'm not sure how, I'm sure it went through an approval process, but, I looked at it from a neighbor's house, and I was like, wow. So I'm seeing it from in a different location, and seeing how that's gonna look to me. Sure.
John, overall, this conversation, is it, and I'm not asking you to speak for your neighbors, but is this moving in the right direction? Besides,
It's
I
not
mean,
gonna be a golf course, so yeah, I guess we're moving with it. As long as some clarification on what's going on and where it is. But I appreciate the changes that we made.
any further discussion from committee? Denny, what are you looking for here?
well, we don't, I'm not asking for recommendations tonight. Again, Hudson Homes will present revised plans to city staff for review. At the next meeting, the city staff, particularly myself, will propose a recommendation to the plan commission. You can do what you want with that recommendation, but it'll be in a written form, so you'll have it prior to the meeting, so. Absolutely.
Sure, come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record.
John Stelling, I live at 1711 Laurel Avenue. One thing I would state is on the map, this diagram here, this doesn't seem very, and I think it's the same as that right there. This doesn't seem very accurate as or as to scale as the survey map does on the reverse side. So this is what was handed out at the last discussion. And that's just one thing I'll point out is that these seem a lot more set back. So 1711 is right there, and the house, when I went on and looked at the staked areas for the house, that would be right behind us. It seems a lot more set back further out on this design, on this side, this picture here, than it really is when you're actually looking at where the stakes are. It's more accurate if you look at the survey map design. So I don't know if you've looked at any of those discrepancies, so, because everything that we've seen up here has been kind of this format, just like very pictorial format and not an actual survey map. And,
Yeah, they're the same plan. There's no difference in that. I don't know if they were photocopied to the same scale that they are.
yeah, and the scale just seems off, and it literally looks like it.
John, is that west property line, has that been staked? I mean, I think it's part of the issue for some of the residents up there is they just don't realize where that property line's at. I mean, they've had kind of a casual use of property at the golf course, and where they've gone over property lines or whatever, but I just have this feeling that some of them think that property line's further east than what it is. And I would highly recommend that perhaps that property line be staked so that the residents
Yeah.
can get a full understanding where that property line's at.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of where our property line is, exactly where it is. But this design right here just does not seem to scale in the existing vegetation, where it notes existing vegetation as to scale as the actual survey map on back. The other thing is, the one thing I noticed, or what I was questioning, and I know this was brought up the last time, was making sure that if there's a way to write in, it's one thing for all the vegetation to be planted day one, but a year later, a big storm comes through, what's going to be written up to make sure that that's maintained? And I'm not just speaking for the new plantings, but if there's something to be written up also for the existing vegetation. There are 6 houses that are sufficiently screened right now during the summer, or during the, when there's leaves on these trees, that are screened from this new development going in, that offer privacy. But if a large storm were to come through and blow that down, a substantial amount of privacy would be lost very quickly for those 6 residents between them and that development. And so, us being one of them. And also during the winter, there's no privacy because it's all deciduous, so.
But whose responsibility would that be if, I mean, they're already there, so that
Are
wouldn't
you
be
talking
the
about trees on whose property? On Hans Hagen's or on the adjacent property?
adjacent property. I mean, it
That's
wouldn't be
their,
Hans,
that's their
right,
responsibility.
it wouldn't be Hans Hagen's issue if those 6 trees went down.
Yeah, so, right, so, but would they replant them?
But
Or
it's
would
not
they-
a part of the development plan.
Yeah, what he's referring to is on the call.
All the like a lot of the existing vegetation that's currently on current resident lots, that's their own responsibility, right? But anything that's on a Hans Hagen property will be the responsibility of Hans Hagen or the association to maintain, is what we've
He's talking about.
understood, right? And so, if we're writing into the agreement on the association that, hey, the new spruce trees and the other vegetation is gonna be planted to offer privacy to the residents, that those will be replaced if, that we're gonna maintain this certain level of privacy between these 2 neighborhoods, that we look at doing that also for some of this existing vegetation that's there, because that's also offering privacy. You're just buying it with that already, so.
We're okay committing to maintaining that, or in place, the association be responsible for that. We could write that in that they would have to replace any dead or diseased or dying trees. It benefits the people who are gonna live here as well as the neighbors.
Sure.
That's all.
Thank you.
But I think we're moving in the right direction. as long as we look at not just getting the right set of privacy, the right level of privacy in place from the start, but also maintaining that going forward, so.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Thanks, John. Number 7, other business for information purposes only for the upcoming agenda.
I just want to,
There's pros and cons to it.
second meeting in October, will be October 8th, and it was going to be the 22nd, but we know there's going to be absence of at least 3 Plan Commission members that evening. So I'll send out an email, see what alternative date we may have.
I'm missing on the 22nd that everyone's going to.
It's not our party.
Yeah. All right, well, Denny and I weren't invited.
Yeah.
I
we
wasn't
were-
either, so.
Oh, okay.
So I'll send out an email, check on alternative dates
right.
for the 22nd, so we can try to get that established. Any other issues?
Is our parking still on the
No,
agenda at some point?
Yeah, I've just been so busy, Fred, I haven't been able to get to it, so.
I'm just
I'll
reminding you.
Try to get back to that issue, yeah, absolutely.
Seeing no other business before the committee,
Move to adjourn.
is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.